When I was 23 years old, I made a decision that my parents completely disagreed with. I told them I was moving out. They thought I was not ready. They wanted me to stay at home longer and save money. I can understand why they felt that way, but if I can go back and do it again, I would make the same exact decision, because moving out and living on my own is probably the most important decision that I made in my 20s. Hello and welcome. My name is Brandon. I am 29 years old, which means I am in the final year of my 20s. And lately, I've been thinking a lot about just how much has happened over the past decade. My 20s have been a pretty interesting time. A lot has changed, and I've experienced things that I never really expected when I first entered my 20s. But through all of those experiences, I've learned a lot about myself and what I want out of life. So I thought this would be a good time to look back and share some of the biggest lessons that I've learned throughout my 20s. This is part of a 20 video series where I am going to share 20 lessons that I learned in my 20s. This is part of a 20 video series where I am going to share 20 lessons that I have learned in my 20s. These are just things that I have personally experienced and things that have helped me grow over the past decade. Hopefully some of them will resonate with you as well. And since this is the very first episode, I wanted to start with the lesson that I think had the biggest impact on my life, which is living alone. Before we get started, if you want to follow along with my journey, consider subscribing. I'll be sharing more lessons and experiences from my 20s throughout this series, and I would love to have you along for it. All right, let's get into lesson number 1, living alone. Before I talk about what I learned from living alone, I think it's important to talk about why I wanted to move out in the first place. I moved out in 2020 when I was 23 years old. At the time, I had graduated college the year before, and I was trying to figure out what my next step in life was. I always knew I wanted to move out after college, but I decided to stay home a little longer just because financially it made sense. I could save money, get settled into my career, and avoid paying rent right away. Then COVID happened, which delayed those plans even more. Honestly, staying at home was comfortable, my parents were supportive, and I was lucky to have that option. But after a while, I realized I had become too comfortable. Before COVID, I didn't really go out much, and I had settled into a routine that wasn't really allowing me to grow. I wanted to know what it was like to be fully independent, to make my own decisions, take care of myself, and build a life that was my own. So the biggest reason I moved out wasn't because I didn't enjoy living with my parents, it was because I knew I needed to step outside of my comfort zone. Once I decided I wanted to move out, the next step was figuring out where I wanted to live. I didn't want to rush the decision, so I spent time researching different areas, setting a budget, and figuring out what I wanted in an apartment. I narrowed it down to a few places and spent about 2 months watching the prices drop before I finally signed a lease. The biggest decision though was whether I wanted to live alone or with roommates. Financially, roommates definitely would have made more sense. I actually joined Facebook groups and talked to people who were also looking for roommates because I wanted to seriously consider that option. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I really valued having my own space. I lived with roommates in college, and that taught me I like having control over my own environment. I like keeping things clean, having my own routine, and just coming home to a place that feels completely mine. So I decided that if I was going to move out, I wanted to fully commit to the experience and live on my own. And in 2020, I signed my first lease and officially moved out. When I first moved out, I thought the biggest change would simply be having my own apartment. I figured I would have more freedom and a place to call my own. And while that was true, I didn't realize how much living alone would change me as a person. The first thing I noticed is that I became a lot more responsible. When you live alone, everything becomes your responsibility. If I don't go grocery shopping, there's no food. If I don't cook, I can't eat. and if I don't clean, my apartment stays messy. So it forced me to be more intentional with my time, stay on top of my responsibilities, and overall I became more proactive. I also loved having a space that was completely my own. I could decorate it however I wanted and keep it as clean as I liked. And then there were little things like I can play music as loud as I want to. I can walk around my apartment naked if I wanted to. I can basically just do whatever I want. Or on the flip side, I can just enjoy the peace and quiet of my own place. And those things may seem small, but having my own place really gave me a sense of independence that I had never really experienced before. But I think the biggest change wasn't the apartment itself, it was what having that independence allowed me to do. I think one of the biggest unexpected benefits of living alone was that it gave me the space to figure out who I wanted to become. For the first time, I had complete control over my own routine. I had the freedom to decide how I wanted to spend my time. And because of that, I became a lot more willing to try new things. I started rock climbing, I took language classes, tried boxing, I tried singing lessons, and even started doing YouTube. Looking back, I honestly do not think I would have tried any of those things had I stayed at home with my parents. Not because my parents would have stopped me, but because I would have just stayed too comfortable. Living alone pushed me to get out of the house, meet new people, and create experiences for myself. It also changed how I approached my career. I'll talk more about that in a future episode, but moving out gave me the confidence to take more risks and decisions for myself instead of always playing it safe. And I think that's what living alone really gave me. It wasn't just an apartment, but it was an opportunity to build a life for myself. So while I have really enjoyed living alone, there are definitely some downsides that I want to talk about. The biggest downside is probably the cost. Living alone is expensive. There's no way around it. When I think about how much I have spent on rent over the years, there's definitely times where I wonder what I could have done with that money. Instead, I could have saved more, invested more, or put that money towards other goals. And that's why I completely understand why a lot of people choose to live with roommates or stay with their parents longer. Those can be really smart decisions, especially if saving money is a priority. I don't think living alone is automatically the right choice for everyone. It really depends on your situation and what you value. The other downside is that it can get pretty lonely sometimes. Sometimes I want someone to talk to or, just share little moments of the day with, but I don't think living alone creates loneliness, because I've felt lonely at different points in my life, even when I lived with roommates or with my parents. I think loneliness is something that everyone experiences at some point. If anything, living alone taught me how to be comfortable spending time with myself. It pushed me to be more intentional about getting out, meeting people, and creating my own experiences. So yes, living alone has its challenges. It costs more money, and sometimes it can feel isolating, but for me, the benefits have far outweighed the downsides. So after living alone for almost 6 years, would I make the same decision again? Absolutely. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned from moving out is that sometimes you need to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation to grow. When I first moved out, I thought I was just getting my own apartment. I thought I was just changing where I lived. But looking back, I realized it was so much more than that. Living alone forced me to become more responsible. It taught me how to take care of myself, make my own decisions, and trust that I could figure out things on my own. It gave me the freedom to explore different interests, take risks, and become someone who was willing to try new things. And honestly, I don't think I would be the same person I am today if I had never moved out. Now, I don't think living alone is the right choice for everyone. For some people, staying with family longer or having roommates is the better decision, especially financially. Everyone's situation is different. But if you have the opportunity to move out and you feel like you're ready for that challenge, I do think there's a lot of value in experiencing that independence. Because sometimes the biggest changes in your life happen when you leave the place where you feel most comfortable. And for me, moving out was one of those moments. But one thing I've realized throughout my 20s is that growing up doesn't happen all at once. Moving out didn't mean I suddenly had everything figured out. If anything, it just gave me more opportunities to learn, make mistakes, and figure things out along the way. And that's actually what I want to talk about in the next episode. The idea that nobody really has it figured out in their 20s. Because for a long time, I thought everyone else knew exactly what they were doing except for me. But the more I have experienced life, the more I have realized that people are just trying to figure things out as they go, just like me. So that's lesson number 2. Nobody really has it figured out in their 20s. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what your biggest takeaway was, or if you have lived alone before, what it taught you. So curious to see what you guys say. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.